Which player should every NFL team pick in the second round of the 2025 NFL Draft? Welcome, football fans, to part 2 of the perfect pick. This time, it's the second round. What would I do as every NFL team? Addressing the biggest needs on your favorite NFL team, this time in the second round. So if you missed my first video where I went through the first round, what I would do, which need I would address for all 32 teams, make sure to go check out that video, come right back, spike the like button, don't be a jabroni, and subscribe, and leave your opinion in the comment section below about what I have done in the first 2 rounds of the 2025 NFL Draft. The perfect pick for round 2 starts now. At number 33, the Cleveland Browns are on the clock. And of course, guys, there are no trades because I'm the general manager of every team. That being said, when it comes to what I would do, I'm also being realistic with the consensus board, but I'm more so looking for the team fit and the right player for the right system. Okay, so at number 33, Shedeur Sanders to the Cleveland Browns. I didn't have him going in the first round because I don't think he's a first round quarterback. And I honestly think in my heart of hearts, there is only one first round quarterback in this class, and his name is Cam Ward, and he's going first overall. I also look at Sanders and I say, there is a chance he actually doesn't get drafted in the first round. If he doesn't go to the Giants, the Saints, or the Steelers, he's probably going in the second round because a lot of the teams that pick in that second round early will be interested in Sanders. Now, there's a chance that a team could pop into the late first round to get him over the other teams. But of course, I'm not making trades here. So at number 33, I have Sanders to the Browns. And I think this is an ideal fit for him. He comes in behind a pretty solid offensive line with an offensive-minded head coach in Kevin Stefanski who can play towards his strengths. I think get him on the move, throwing on the move off of some play action, have him feel protected, right? Allow him to be accurate, but not having to throw a ton of downfield passes. Get him involved in the screen game, the quick game. I think that Sanders is at his best when he's able to simplify his reads and make accurate, decisive decisions because I think his mechanics are very good. I think the way he throws the ball, it's crisp. It's on the money. I am concerned about his deep ball. I'm concerned about his mobility, and I'm concerned about him growing as a processor. I think he's a little slow in that area of his game where he's very overrated by a lot of people, but I think under Stefanski, he can grow into a better player in that department, okay? But given the protection they'll have, given the emphasis on the ground game in Cleveland, having a very good defense, having his teammate Travis Hunter only further emphasizes the fact that the Cleveland Browns should be extremely interested in adding Sanders and Hunter and having that combination transfer to the college level to the NFL because they have great chemistry. They're best friends. It would work amazingly in Cleveland, and I really feel like it would juice up the dog pound. It would juice up Cleveland football. It would make them relevant. That's also a huge deal, and it would give them somebody that they can look towards to have hope. Sanders can be that steady, calm presence in the locker room, even with Deshaun Watson lurking over him, right? And he can be the answer long-term for the Cleveland Browns. So at number 33, there's a lot of reasons why Cleveland would like him. He's a great fit with Stefanski, and he's also a great leader for the future of this franchise. At number 34, I'm also going with the quarterback to the New York Giants. It's kind of funny that the Browns and Giants pick back-to-back here at the start of the first round because both of these teams could pick a quarterback right here. And both of them might like different quarterbacks in this spot. I'm going with Jalen Milroe out of Alabama. Now, I could personally make an argument that Jalen Milroe has the highest ceiling of any quarterback in this class. And that's why I think the Giants would look at him and swing for the fences. Because why not? Ryan Daboll might lose his job, right? And you also look at the Giants and you say they don't need a quarterback short term. They brought in Russell Wilson for a reason, and they also have Jameis Winston. So there's really no way that a rookie quarterback is playing unless it's Cam Ward, right? I think everyone else is looked at as a developmental prospect. So why not get the guy that resembles a Lamar Jackson-esque athlete, right? Why not get the guy with a cannon for a deep ball and also for the ability to be maybe the best rushing quarterback in football right away? So yes, Milroe has a lot of flaws in terms of, I think, off of his first read, his mechanics get sloppy, his feet are awkward. He needs to work on his feet and his ability to maintain his accuracy from 1 to 2 to 3. I think that he needs to process a little bit better. I think that he could be better at just understanding the intermediate level of the field, throwing the football in the middle of the field. Those are areas where I think he can very much improve. But you're not going to find a quarterback with much more athleticism, with much more escapability, with much more dynamic nature, right? You can scheme an entire run game around him, which what does that do? We saw with rookie Lamar Jackson, like that makes every defense scared of you running the ball, makes your run game better, makes coverages simpler, which makes it easier to throw. And when you have great receivers like Malik Neighbors, right? And potentially even an awesome defense on the other end, now that you add Abdul Carter, right? You've got, okay, with Jalen Milroe, a guy that could really be special. And I think he has the attitude, the belief, the coachability to be special, right? Those are the main areas. There's a reason Josh Allen worked out, even though he was very raw, because he was a coachable player and he worked on his craft. And I think Milroe could be the same, kind of like Jalen Hurts too. So at number 34, I have Jalen Milroe, one of the other Jalens, to the Giants. At number 35, the Tennessee Titans will take a wide receiver for Cam Ward, and I like the fit of Luther Burden here. I don't know if I'm as high on Burden as some others. I think I'd have maybe one or two other receivers that go actually after him, maybe ahead of him. But in terms of the fit in Tennessee, I think it's ideal because he's primarily going to be an inside player in the NFL. And I think that there is somewhat of a comp to like, you want to look at him as sort of like a Deebo Samuel type of player. He might not have quite that ability, but you want him inside. You don't really want him as like a pure route running slot, but you want him as a manufactured touch guy, a guy that can also go down the field on a fade and take the top off a defense and stress you vertically. But I think his dynamic nature to make people miss in the open field, to open up an offense in that way, and then also to just be a guy that can create a 5-yard reception into a 15, 20-yard play and just add that explosiveness to Tennessee and allow a young quarterback also, with all the different release points and the great, RPO game of Cam Ward that I think he brings to the NFL. This is the ideal receiver for him in the middle of the field to make the most of those plays. So you have Calvin Ridley, who's more of that nuanced X receiver who can run a ton of different routes, right, at every level of the field. Now you need a guy that can do something with the ball, which Calvin Ridley certainly is not, right? You have a Okonkwo at tight end, but I feel like they're missing this style of playmaker. So I think at number 35, that makes a lot of sense for me. At number 36, I also have another receiver. So we're going quarterback, receiver in this what I would do / the perfect pick for each team. And I think Jacksonville, in a perfect world, comes away with a wide receiver in the first 2 rounds. Emeka Egbuka is a player that some people are even comparing to Chris Godwin. And as we know, Liam Cohen was the offensive coordinator of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Egbuka could be that tough inside wide receiver for his offense that perfectly complements as the Robin to Brian Thomas's Batman, right? He's tough. He's a nuanced route runner, although I don't think he's a great separator. I think he's fantastic against zone. His IQ is off the charts. I think his hands are very, very reliable. And I just think he is almost like a very high floor receiver prospect, maybe not super high ceiling, very productive in college football, very NFL ready. And I just think he could do a lot of the Chris Godwin type of things, the intermediate level of the field, taking contact, making a tough catch, or, maybe occasionally a screen or a 3rd down conversion here or there. Like, I think this is the type of player, ultimately a number 2 in the NFL. And I think at number 36, it makes a lot of sense for Jacksonville to get Trevor Lawrence a weapon, because right now De'Ami Brown's their number 2. He's more ideally a number 3 who can stretch the field with his speed, right? So I think Ibuka makes a lot of sense there after addressing the defensive line in the first round. Trey Amos, cornerback to the Las Vegas Raiders. I had them going with Ashton Genty in the first round. And guys, remember, go check that video out for more nuance and discussion about those picks. And I'm not going to bring up all those picks in this video so that you guys actually check that video out. But at number 37, I've got Trey Amos because I think corner is the biggest need on their team. I think this is a possible first-round player. I think that he can play man or zone, but I think he's actually one of the more nuanced and awareness IQ zone players. He has a very good understanding of kind of the spots in the zone and where to sit and understanding the leverage against the wide receivers and what he can get away with and things like that. I think he's very savvy in his secondary coverage, okay? So Trey Amos is a guy that I kind of view, again, do it all, can probably play in a lot of different systems, preferably more zone than man, but I think he could press as well and play in press systems. I just think he's a very well-balanced player. He impressed me quite a bit. I think he's a top 5 corner in this class, and I think the Raiders desperately need a corner, and I think this is the best guy available. So I went with him at number 37. At number 38, my Patriots are on the clock after taking Will Campbell with the 4th overall pick, which is also the highly, highly projected pick for them. I am going to take Kyle Williams, the wide receiver here. I like Williams a lot. I think that he is very good as a smaller X receiver, which I think the Patriots need a perimeter playmaker and to complement Stephon Diggs and to help out Drake May. After getting Will Campbell at left tackle, they addressed wide receiver. Williams has very good speed to burn you over the top. I think that he has very good ability to actually track the ball deep because he has very good understanding of flashing his hands, late hands, that ability to be a deep downfield playmaker, which I think is a perfect complement for Drake May. He also has one of the best release packages in this class as well, and he's a quick, slant jitterbug type route runner in that area as well. So I think that his size is actually not a detriment. He does have some weaknesses in terms of his length and things like that. But I feel in the Patriots offense and a Josh McDaniels scheme, they've never been about the size guy. You know what I'm saying? So I feel he could almost be sort of a Brandon Cooks-ish type player for the Josh McDaniels scheme, that type of X perimeter player. So at number 38, Kyle Williams helps out Drake May. At number 39, Walter Nolan, the defensive tackle to the Chicago Bears. Some people have him going as high as 11 to the 49ers. I personally don't see him as a high-end first-round prospect. I see him somewhere in the 20s or below, and this just so happened to align with the need here. I think Chicago could use a defensive lineman at this pick, and I went with Walter Nolan. I think that when you look at their defensive depth chart, they've got Grady Jarrett, who's very old. They have some younger guys like Dexter, who I'm not exactly sold on. And they also have Andrew Billings, who's kind of a middling talent, decent against the run, role player type player. But Walter Nolan gives them pretty good upside. He might be inconsistent. I think that he sometimes can be overpowered in certain aspects. But I love his quickness and his penetration ability. And if he can kind of work on some of the nuances of his game, I feel that upside to be a very good penetrator, quick pass rusher to get that disruption, that can make you a very good player at this position. So I think Dennis Allen will look at that and try to mold that into something special alongside the rest of the defensive front that Chicago's building in this draft, and also what they did this offseason with Montez Sweat also on board as well. At number 40, Jackson Dart to the New Orleans Saints. So the Saints have the 40th pick, and I didn't go with the quarterback in the first round because it's what I would do, right? I could see them going with the quarterback at number 9. Maybe Sanders is a possibility, as we brought up earlier, but I had them taking Will Johnson. So with that being said, Jackson Dart is a guy that has been heavily connected to the Saints, and I'm not even a huge, I'd probably rather go with Shuck here. Like if I had to actually pick the quarterback. But I think it's more realistic that Dart goes ahead of him, so I decided to go with Dart. I also look at the connections between him and the Saints, and it makes more sense. I also think that he could fit Kellen Moore's offense. I think Kellen Moore could design a scheme where, he's running a lot of play action. He's running a lot of RPO stuff, an occasional run every once in a while. He has that Ole Miss flavor to him as well. I think a lot of charisma, a lot of command. I like his composure and confidence to read the field. I think that he's more athletic than given credit for. He doesn't have an incredible arm, but I think the type of scheme that they'd be looking to run in New Orleans would not really ask him to be that. So I could see a world where he is a good quarterback. And I've even seen people say he might be the best quarterback in this class. So yeah, Jackson Dart at number 40 to the Saints as their future franchise quarterback. Whether Derek Carr is there or not, if he's there this year, he sits behind him, he learns from Derek Carr. If he's hurt, then Dart could be the quarterback as soon as week 1. At number 41, Nick Skurton, I believe, or Skorton, the edge out of Texas A&M. He's a power edge. Chicago, again, building the defensive line here. In the first round, I had them going with Tyler Warren. So I didn't have them going with the defensive lineman. Just so to clarify that, I don't have them picking 3 defensive linemen. But I look at them and I say, they don't really need a lot. So look at the biggest needs and potentially long-term needs. And I also look at Chicago saying, like, they need a third edge rusher. And I think that he could eventually be like their number 2. So looking at him, I thought his 2023, some of what he did in 2023 actually showed a lot more pass rush potential. In 2024, I think he added some weight at Texas A&M, and he was more known for like run defense and setting the edge and power rush. He added a little bit of a spin move flair and things like that, but he's the type of size, I think, the ideal look for a defensive end in the Dennis Allen scheme. And like I've been saying with the Bears, they're wanting to build the line of scrimmage. They addressed the line of scrimmage of the offense in free agency. Now they're addressing the line of scrimmage of their defense in the draft. It makes a lot of sense here to get a dog like this, who I actually really liked his feistiness, his energy, his willingness to just get nasty in the run game, things like that. So at number 41, I've got Nick here to the Bears. Then at number 42, Mason Taylor, a name that I think is rising across the draft community, but I like him. He's the son of Jason Taylor. Jason Taylor actually happened to play for the Jets at one time, I believe. So that would be kind of cool. But Mason Taylor is a very well-rounded prospect out of LSU, and he's more of a well-rounded receiver. I don't think he's a great blocker, in my opinion, but he's a guy that I think does everything for a receiving tight end pretty well. He's got, I think, very smooth, effortless movement. He's able to create something with the ball, just kind of gliding his way to easy yards. He's also, I think, a very good route runner at the top of his route to shake off guys. And he's got, a pretty good size to him as well. So I feel like he is the third best tight end in this class. I think he can grow as a technical route or technical run blocker or blocker in general, but I think as a receiver, he could easily contribute right away for the Jets. So if the Jets do not get a tight end in round 1, then I think Mason Taylor is very much the guy to look at here. At number 43, I have Josh Conerly Jr. to the Niners, and this was kind of difficult. I could see Conerly going as high as the first round, maybe like in the 23 through 32 range. I could see that happening. So for the Niners to land him at 43, I think might take a little bit of luck, but I think it's possible because some teams might not be as sold on him. Is he a long-term tackle? Maybe not sold on his power. But I think he has such special movement skills that make him an ideal prospect for the 49er offense for Kyle Shanahan's zone-heavy running scheme. And I think he could play guard or tackle. So if they want him to play left guard early in his career, he could probably do that. He could maybe play right tackle if they want him to do that as well over McKivitz, but I don't think that would be what they would want to do. And then long-term, I think he can take over for Trent Williams at left tackle. He's just got to add a little bit more anchor, a little bit more size, a little bit more power to his game. But his movement is absolutely phenomenal. Like, it's the best in this class. His ability to pull, get in space, his ability to do the things that the Niners want to do, they might look at him as their favorite tackle in this class. And I don't think that's even a crazy thing to say. So to get him in the second round, that would be pretty crazy. At number 44, Travion Henderson out of Ohio State to the Dallas Cowboys. I had them picking McMillan, I believe, in the first round. So they got T-Mac, a big-time wide receiver to complement CeeDee Lamb. Now they get another explosive weapon out of Ohio State at running back to be their lead back and the guy right away. And what I like about Henderson compared to the rest of the backs on the board at this point is I think he's a 3-down running back that is not a guy that's going to be a 20 carry a game player. That's not what he was at Ohio State, but he can catch the ball, run routes, pass block, the best in this class, in my opinion. And also, he is a devastating, explosive runner. He is explosive. He can take off and he can create chunk gains. And that's what the Cowboys are looking for, right? They can rely on these veterans like Miles Sanders and Javonte Williams to take, a few carries a game, but Henderson can be their Aaron Jones-ish type of player in this offense, right? And I think that's what Schottenheimer's looking like and looking at, and I think they need a player that can make some explosive gains on the ground and even occasionally as a receiver. So Henderson was a guy I liked a lot. He is the type of Mitch running back, so I would really like this pick for Dallas. At number 45, I have Carson Schlesinger, the linebacker to the Colts. I think the Colts could use a linebacker, and if they don't go with one in the first round, let's say that Campbell's there, but they don't pick him, then they could go with Schlesinger, who I think is a very good mover, despite actually being deceptively big. He's actually a pretty big linebacker, but his fluid movement is off the charts. He's always around the football. He's always trying to get the tackle. He's always flying from sideline to sideline. Very fluid in coverage as well. This is the type of Lou Anarumo linebacker that they're looking for. He doesn't care as much for the thumpers. He cares more for that speed, for that range, for that coverage, like Wilson and Pratt were for him in Cincinnati. And I think Schlesinger, his underwhelming elements might be more of the power element, right? More of that thumper element. But I think that he is reckless enough to kind of overcome that. He is aggressive enough, diagnoses enough, well enough to be able to overcome that. He's a player I like. So at number 45, the Colts could definitely use a linebacker beside Franklin. I think he can start right away for them. At number 46, we've got Thomas, the corner to the Atlanta Falcons. I'm going to avoid his first name for now. We've talked about him in the past, but he's really good at zone. He has concerns for his speed. I think he ran the 40 and it wasn't very fast, but just in general, he doesn't appear to be very fast on film. He is good in press coverage, but if he does get beat, there are concerns that maybe he gets burnt. That being said, he's long, he's tall, and he's got that going for him. And Atlanta is also a team that plays a lot more zone than man. So I feel like his skill set is ideal for what Raheem Morris wants to do, right? So whether it's with the hands on him due to the length or the range or the wingspan due to his size, I feel like he's a great corner pick for them. They went with an edge rusher in the first round, so now complementing that with a secondary pick, I think he could start as their CB2 on the perimeter right away opposite A.J. Terrell. I think that's probably the ideal role for him in the NFL is more of a CB2 type. I don't think he'll ever develop into a CB1 because I don't think he's quite as fluid or quite as explosive enough to be a CB1, but I do think that his floor is rather high coming from a very good FSU system. At number 47, I have Jalen Noel to the Arizona Cardinals, the wide receiver. He is a guy that I look at as a speed slot player or kind of like a Christian Kirk-ish type of player, which that makes a lot of sense for Kyler Murray. He seemed to have a very good connection with Christian Kirk early in his career. That obviously he left to Jacksonville, and I don't think Kyler has ever really been the same without that type of player, where a guy that can explode down the field and really threaten defenses down the field and, be that type of slot upgrade over maybe a Greg Dortch, right? And I think they need some vertical element to this offense. So I think Noel can definitely do that for them. I think he could be their number 2, and do the things that Marvin Harrison isn't exactly the greatest at, which is speed, which is suddenness, which is twitch. So I think Noel makes a lot of sense here. They're going defense in the first round. I think I have them going defense, right? Actually, I had a pretty interesting pick for them in the first round. But for offense in the second round, I think wide receiver is a position that they've clearly been connected to. A lot of people are saying wide receiver for them. And I don't think they should go with a wide receiver in the first round. I think they should pick the best possible defender. But in the second round, I think there are going to be a plethora of receiver targets that they might like. And I think Noel makes the most sense because of his slot ability. At number 48, I have Alfred Collins out of Texas to the Miami Dolphins. Big, stout run defender with that bull rush and the power to be a pretty effective pass rusher. Not a dominant one, but I think that Miami is looking for a complement to Zach Sealer for the short term, and then also they're going to need defensive linemen for the long term. They lost a ton of snaps along the defensive front this offseason. Collins is a plug-and-play type of player, in my opinion, because he's very stout against the run, played a ton of games at Texas, ton of snaps. So he's going to be easily a guy that can enter the NFL and play well. So yeah, not a super sexy pick here, but I think Miami needs to address the line of scrimmage, get tougher, get more physical, get more stout. And I think they do that with Collins. At number 49, Jonah Savaiinaea. That's as close as I can get, bro. Arizona guard. And you know what's funny about this one is the first picture I wanted for him, it was so big, like his head, his body is legitimately so big. I've never seen this before in a profile picture. I've never seen this before in a player picture that I have to put on my graphics. The guy is so wide that he didn't even fit, like he took up the entire logo of the Bengals. So I had to find a different photo for him standing up because he's so wide. That's the type of player you're looking at here in Jonah. He is powerful, right? Bulky, and he's going to move you off the spot, okay? And that's what the Bengals are looking for on their offensive line. They don't really care for like the quick, agile type of guards and things like that. They're looking for the guys that can press you, run those duo runs, just run you right down your throat that way. So yeah, I think this is an underrated prospect as well that I think could go a little bit higher than people are expecting. I would look out for him in this range. I think that the Bengals definitely need, if they need anything on offense, it's a starting guard, and I think he can bring in their mold of type of player that they're looking for. At number 50, Jared Wilson, center to the Seahawks. So in the first round, I have them picking Zabel, who might be a center, but also maybe projects as the best guard in the draft as well. So I have them going with Jared Wilson, who would be the next best available interior offensive lineman, and he happens to play center. So now we address two of the offensive line positions here with Jared Wilson and Gray Zabel. Wilson is an NFL-ready center. He's going to be able to really help Sam Darnold. When we're talking about Sam Darnold, Darnold is most effective with players around his feet, pressure right up the middle. He seems to see ghosts in that regard. Wilson also, I think, can be very good in terms of his ability in the zone system of Seattle. He's very smart as well. So I think he can cover up for some of the deficiencies of Sam Darnold and make Sam Darnold a better quarterback and also make this offensive line a lot better as well. So you get two offensive linemen in the first two rounds, Seattle. You have one more pick in the second round. We'll see what you do with that one. Next up, we got Jaden Higgins, wide receiver to the Denver Broncos. I love this fit. I think this is one of the better fits for the Broncos at wide receiver. Higgins is a bigger player that I actually project more as a power slot than an outside receiver because he lacks some explosion. But I do think that he is very laterally sound for a bigger player. Kind of reminded me of Drake London in that regard, but also kind of has, the wingspan and the contested catch ability to be pretty effective along the sidelines in the red zone for red zone fades and things like that. And then also potentially pretty tough over the middle. I look at him as maybe the Sean Payton, Michael Thomas-esque type of player, and I think they could use another weapon. So I went them going running back in the first round, complement that with a wide receiver. All of a sudden, Bo Nix has all the weapons to work with. And they also need to think about replacing Cortland Sutton long-term. So Higgins could be a similar type of player to Sutton long-term, but in the short term, he could also be very useful in the inside of the formation, helping out Bo Nix on a lot of those screens and RPOs and things like that. At number 52, Darian Porter is a surprise pick here to the Seattle Seahawks. I think they could use a corner on the perimeter, and I think Porter has maybe the highest upside of any corner in this entire class. His athleticism is off the charts special. Like, he has the type of projection where his tape is actually good. On the limited amount of snaps that you see him play at corner, it's actually really good. He's got incredible size. He's got incredible speed. He lit up the combine. And he's a relatively, unknown prospect, I feel like. He's very underrated, but his upside is immense. So give him to a defensive coach, a molder of talent like Mike McDonald, and all of a sudden you could have another Reek Woolen on your hands. Like, this guy has that type of athleticism, that type of size. Like, Reek Woolen was a guy that the Seattle coveted, Seattle picked because of those similar reasons, despite maybe the unknown qualities of this player. Porter is exactly that. I think he's going to go a lot earlier than people think because he is a freak show. At number 53, Xavier Watts to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think they need to address linebacker and safety in one way, shape, or form early in this draft. So they get Watts out of Notre Dame, who's a very well-rounded safety. I think he's better in split coverage, better as a deeper safety than maybe a box safety, but I feel like he could do either one. So it provides some versatility. I think he also played a little bit in the nickel, things like that. So he's got that versatility to allow you to be even more versatile with Antoine Winfield. And personally, I believe that Winfield has always been better closer to the line of scrimmage. I think that despite his range and ability to play deep in coverage, I think Winfield is such a playmaker that he should be closer to the ball, right? And that's how you can unlock him with a guy like Watts, okay? So at number 53, the Bucs have needed an upgrade at safety. That partner in crime for Winfield, they get one here. At number 54, Benjamin Morrison, the cornerback from Notre Dame, to the Green Bay Packers. He's got very good physicality, and physicality might not be the word, but he's good in press, and he projects as a man press corner, but also I think those press abilities also project to Green Bay's potential defense or preferred system of defense, and then also he's got very good size, right? I think he's like 6'3" or something like that. But he had a very good 2023. I think he was actually looked at as a potential first-round pick. He was injured in 2024, so he kind of fell off the map a little bit. But I think Morrison could be a guy that, despite the injury concern, goes in the second round because he has very solid tape at a very good system in a very good school. And I think that will be well respected by the Packers, who need a corner to play right away on the perimeter, especially if Alexander does get traded. I think they're going to need somebody like this. So Morrison, to me, should go somewhere in the range of the late second to the early third, and that's why I have him going to Green Bay. Next, at number 55, Darius Alexander is one of my low-key favorite crushes of a defensive lineman in this class. I really like him because he kind of reminds me of guys like Leonard Williams and Daron Payne. He's a nose tackle that I feel like he's got that. I always like the nose tackles that have a little bit more athleticism, a little bit more versatility, a little bit more pass rush profile than maybe they're kind of alluded to. And that's what Darius Alexander kind of reminds me of. So I think he'd fit the Charger system because I feel like he could play across the defensive front. I feel like he could be very versatile in his approach and his design and where you place him across the formation. I think they desperately need a defensive line upgrade in terms of their interior. And I think Alexander gives them not only a guy that I feel like can play a bunch of different spots, but also a unique level of upside that you can find in the second round. I wouldn't be surprised if this guy ended up being really good. At number 56, Kevin Winston Jr., the safety from Penn State to Buffalo. This is another guy that was injured a lot in 2024. But in 2023 had high-end safety tape, and then also he has high-end traits. So you combine really good tape from a year ago, despite the injuries, with really good traits, size, speed, all that sort of stuff. To me, his profile more so suits a box safety, but I feel like he has enough fluidity, enough speed and range to be able to be a free safety. And Buffalo kind of treats their safeties, they typically like these guys a little bit more with that sort of profile. So Yeah, I mean, they need a safety. I mean, we went with a corner in the first round. I think they need to continue to address the secondary, get youthful at those spots, get more athletic at those spots, and I think they've done that in this draft so far. They still have one more pick. At number 57, I've got Andrew Makuba from Texas, the safety to the Carolina Panthers. I really like this guy. He's feisty. He's fearless. He's all over the field making tackles, making plays. He's got very good instincts, and he just sees the ball. He gets the ball. I think Carolina could use this type of guy of a free safety that can have the range, that can complement Morig, who's going to be closer to the football. Some people, I think, have even compared him to like a Devin McCourty type, where he's got very good instincts, very good IQ, very good range. I kind of thought he showed a lot more of that, toughness in the box a little bit at Texas, but I think he could do, probably either one, which is where he's one of the more underrated safety prospects, in my opinion. At number 58, Tate Ratledge, guard to the Houston Texans. I considered a tackle here, but we went tackle in the first round. There's just a really good tackle remaining on the board, and that I was like, he can't last this long. So I was like, when is he going to go? But Tate makes more sense because they do need a starting guard, right? If they get Josh Simmons or somebody of that nature in the first round, then adding to the guard position would be, again, ideal. I don't think they should pick a receiver. I don't think they should pick a defensive tackle. Save that for day 3 or the 3rd round or whatever. But to me, Ratledge could just... I think he's a little bit more of the nasty power type than maybe the Texans are accustomed to. But they've kind of shown some mixed signals with their approach to what their offensive line is going to look like. Like, I don't necessarily look at Cam Robinson and Trent Brown as like these finesse guys. They're more so power types. So I wonder if they're looking at a different sort of way of being in their offensive line approach and their run game. So I'm intrigued by that. But Ratledge is a tough dude. Ratledge is gritty. He's gonna knock you over, get in your face, and that's the type of grit that this offensive line needs. They need kind of a dick on the offensive line because they've been so terrible. So you get 2 starters potentially in year 1 in the first 2 rounds if you're the Texans. You got to be excited about that. At number 59, Marcus Mbow. He's a guard that I think has the size profile, but also the movement skills that, make him a really interesting fit for the Ravens. A guy that I think can get in space and devastate. Like when Derrick Henry's getting out wide, this guy can pull, get in space, and do some damage that way. So he's, I think, very underrated too. Like a name that I don't see enough in this range. I think he's creeping up there, but yeah, I think he's a good fit. I thought Ratledge was also a good fit here, but obviously I had to make a decision for the Texans. So yeah, I think the Ravens low-key need a guard. I think they could go secondary. I went with an edge rusher, I believe, in the first round. I think guard is low-key a need, though, because they did lose a starter in Macari this offseason. So whether it's in the short term for him or the long term, he'll develop into a quality starter that is the movement and the size that Baltimore covets. At number 60, Landon Jackson to the Detroit Lions. This is a classic Detroit Lion, big, strong, lengthy edge rusher. Probably not the best pure bend, crazy pass rush skill set, but it's going to set the edge incredibly well. He's going to have long arms, going to be able to, stop the run, and then I think have a little bit of versatility up front, He looks like the Batman villain Victor Zsasz, so that's also interesting. He's literally going to cut your knee off. But, Landon Jackson, I think he's just the prototypical Lion defensive end. And when you look at their needs, besides guard, which we've addressed in the first round, I think defensive end is their next best need. So Jackson could immediately play at least on early downs in his NFL career. At number 61, JT Tuamalu out of Ohio State. He is an interesting guy that I think actually was kind of underrated on his own team to some degree, but he's a well-rounded defensive end. I think he has more pass rush flair than maybe given credit for. And the Commanders desperately need a defensive end. Like, they didn't replace Dante Fowler correctly, in my opinion. They need somebody they can develop, even if they have some veterans that they did bring in to help out. I feel like they need a guy long-term that can start for them opposite Dorrance Armstrong. And even Dorrance Armstrong in his own right is not an edge one. So, JT to me was the next best edge rusher. That makes a lot of sense. He's the Commander type. So, at number 61, I've got him. Then at number 62, TJ Sanders to the Buffalo Bills. He's the Buffalo Bill type of defensive tackle. He's got that quickness, but he's also got a good amount of like girth and lower body strength to him, where I think he can hold up against the run, but I also feel like he's got the quick hands and the good hand usage to be able to be an effective pass rusher. So the Bills typically like their quicker penetrating style defensive tackles. I think he has enough of that in his game, but I also think he brings some stoutness to where it could help them against the run as well. They need a little bit of depth and a little bit of youth on the defensive tackle position, and I think Sanders could help them out. Probably wouldn't play too much as a rookie, but they don't really need that. They just need maybe a situational defensive tackle for the short term. At number 63, another defensive tackle here who I considered for Buffalo, but I think he's a little bit too big and it doesn't really, have the movement skills that maybe Buffalo covets. So Tyleik Williams out of Ohio State is, I think, a player that would be effective for the Chiefs because they need a guy that can two-gap, a guy that can take on blocks, a guy that can eat up space, a guy that can complement Chris Jones, a guy that can take some of the food off the plate for Chris Jones. Chris Jones, at this point of his career, he's in his early 30s. He can't be going out there and, just constantly be eating double teams, constantly being the run stuff extraordinaire. Like, Williams is going to be that guy for them. He is massive, right? He takes up a ton of space, and he's going to be one of the better run defenders, I think. He's kind of like a Devondre Sweat type prospect. Like, he's absolutely humongous, okay? So at number 63, Williams to the Chiefs. They need defensive line help. And then at number 64, we've got Ursary to the Eagles. This is the guy I was referring to with the Texans, a guy that I could see going as early as the first round, lands all the way to the end of the second. This would be classic Eagles scooping up value. I think a tackle that could be the long-term replacement of Lane Johnson. He's just underrated. I think especially in terms of I wouldn't say he's like the best in terms of like his movement, but I would say like his anchor is really impressive. His pass protection skills, his nuance in that regard is very, very good, right? So I think he is a guy that with a team like the Eagles, they're stacked. Sure, could they look at a linebacker or look at a defensive end or something? Yeah, they could. But in my opinion, they could go after a guy that could just probably start in the NFL right now at a tackle position. What happens if one of your tackles go down? You've got a guy short-term and you've got a guy long-term, right? So I think Ursary, and again, I had to find a home for him in the first two rounds, and it was really difficult for me to do. So yeah, there we go. There it is, the perfect pick for every NFL team in the 2025 NFL Draft. This is part 2, guys. Thank you for watching. Gronk, spike the like button. Don't be a jabroni. Subscribe. More mock drafts coming before the 2025 NFL Draft. Peace.